My first word goes to Randy Mike. Just received in Portugal a month ago. It was an honor and a privilege to receive you in Lisbon. It's an honor and a privilege to be here in Egypt. It's such culture and civilization. It's such strength and key role in the region and in the world. It's an honor and a privilege. I share with you, all of you, dear ambassadors, ministers, and friends, colleagues, professors, and colleague students. The person who is speaking to you today is a teacher by vocation. From the beginning, a constructor of freedom, of thought and religion, of those who believe, of those who do not believe alike, defender of ecumenical dialogue between them all, and in particular, between religions and churches. President of the Portuguese Republic, which has a constitution, which, incidentally, I voted at the age of 26, which enshrines those fundamental rights for everyone in Portugal, both Portuguese and foreigners. Allow me to explain further. I am a teacher. That was and is my chosen life. Learning and lecturing, researching and transmitting. So I feel at home in this historic al-Azhar University, full of history, of culture, of civilization. Ultimately, all our lives are a school in which we receive and give from the time we become self-aware until we leave this world. So thank you very much for this meeting to talk about what we dream for us all, and also what hinders that dream in the reality that surrounds us. There is no university without dreams, just as there is no university without study and knowledge of the reality that surrounds us. More than that, university is essential for more and better freedom, better human dignity. That's what we are fighting for. I have always been a constructor of freedom of thought and of freedom to follow religion or none. A constructor is much more than a respecter. To respect, one needs only not to act. To construct, to build, it is necessary to act, to promote, to support, to explain, to defend actively. The history of humanity is full of examples of attacks on freedom of religion. I speak for us Portuguese. Often, before and during our colonial expansion, we imposed a faith, and we did with it a vision of that faith dominating and sacrificing other faiths, and many who did not share any of them. And because we believed at that time in the exclusive goodness of the faith that we were spreading, we denied the truth of all the others. It was an error. Whether they were non-Catholic Christians, Muslim, Oriental, Jewish, or any others. We know today that the struggle for freedom of thought and the freedom of religion, the freedom to believe or not, is continuing all over the world, and that young people, unquestionably with still more future ahead of them, should be the most insistent in this struggle against discrimination, against inequality, against injustice, against barriers or any kind of limits to the freedom of believing. I'm also a defender of ecumenical dialogue between religions and churches. Nobody, believer or non-believer, can see himself or herself as a citizen, or more than that, as a superior person with the power to ignore, to minimize, to subjugate others because of his or her philosophy, belief, or religion. You can believe that your way is the more correct in life and in your relationship with the eternal or with the divine or the religious, if that is your choice. I have my personal religion, but that does not allow me to dominate the others and their religions, not to accept their freedom of religion. If I really do believe, I must give the example of accepting the other believers, the other faiths, the other religions. It's a way of respecting each one, each person, the dignity of each person. Because living together in a community, we must respect each other. One is not able to live in society while refusing to enter into dialogue with those who do not share one's convictions. That's one mistake we do very often. I say to my students, don't judge the others thinking of yourself. We are all different. We are all different. We have different opinions about life, about society, about the economy, about culture. And we must accept difference because we were born different. Worse than that, we cannot persecute, attack, eliminate those that do not believe as we do. Besides, I ask you, what could God demand such intolerance without denying their own nature? A bloodthirsty God? A God denying the good, the beautiful, the path to the finest personal and community fulfillment? There is no such God. If God is eternal, then God respects fully each person and asks us to respect fully each person. I am the President of the Portuguese Republic. And today Portugal proclaims all these and other values of freedom, equality, solidarity, justice in its constitution. I voted it at the age of 26 with enthusiasm, still as a young man. And 42 years later, I tried to apply it with determination, because I promised the Portuguese people when I started my term, I would respect and make the respect of the Constitution one principle of my term. I must do it so that I accomplish my duties, my constitutional duties. Of course, I continue to dream of a freer, more equal, more united, more compassionate, more democratic and free Portugal. You know that each country is living a complex process of economic, social and political development, different in each country. And we must dream of a better country, a better world, and fight for it, and work for it every day. Of course, I know, you know, that everywhere this struggle confronts those who think and argue for the opposite. That's why it is so important to praise those who speak words of peace and not of war, of love and not of hatred, of brotherhood and not of enmity. Those who really want to share more with the others, knowing there are people that are poorer than we are. I share a part of my living sometimes in the middle of my duties with the homeless. With the homeless. Because there are parts of the society that need more than others. And we must be there. And we scholars, we must of course teach and learn, but live. A real scholar must live his or her values every day, thinking of those that are poorer than us, that need more than us, that ask for more compassion. That's why it's so important to repeat, as I did it a month ago in Portugal, that Islam is a part of the soul of Portugal. And I repeat it very, very often. And when I see some European leaders saying they don't consider Islam as a part of European spirit, they are wrong. Because there is no pure European. Europe is a result of a mixture of cultures and civilizations, of the Greek, of the Roman, of the Egyptian, first of all, of your culture and civilization, of the Christian spirit also, but also of the Islam, also of the Germans, the Africans, Asians, Americans, of all those influences. They are there. And that's why Europe is so strong and should be even stronger. If we start creating limits to our soul, believing our soul is just a result of a church, of a religion, of an option, of a choice, of an influence, we lose the lesson of history and we miss the lesson of the future. That's why it's so important in Europe today to fight against nationalism, to fight against xenophobia, against isolationism, against populism, against all ways of creating splits and divisions, instead of creating bridges and dialogue. That's why it's so important to work for peace in the Near and Middle East, in North and Central Africa, all over the continent. Not to be closing doors, not to be building bastions, fueling anger and conflict. That's why it's so important to resist the use of thought, religion, or education to foment oppression and sectarian way of thinking. Instead of inviting understanding of the other, liberation, effective solidarity. Despite all the wars, all the economic interests that feed them, all the political strategies that sustain them, all the personal vanities that justify them, all the attacks with verbal violence, all the violence of the arms, of the weapons, in spite of this horror that every day reflects death, fear, insecurity, and belief, we must go on dreaming. We must go on dreaming and fighting for peace. It is difficult. It is difficult. It's nearby us. It is. It is promised every day by many leaders. It is. There are risks. There are. We must fight against all these kind of temptations. It's hard, but we must reach peace and respect of the other, and freedom of thinking and of believing. That's why, as a professor, as a citizen, as a president, I go on believing. And I will go on believing till the end of my life, because I believe in people of flesh and bone. It's very easy to respect human dignity as an abstract idea. It's more difficult to deal with human dignity every day, with our colleagues, our students, our fellow citizens, with common citizens. It's more difficult. It's much more difficult. All of them, they have the right to live and to live in their own way. I believe in life and liberty, fraternity, solidarity, and in the quest for greater equality. And I say this to you here today because a university, even more than a place of study, of ideas, of analysis of facts, is a place of values, is a place of values. And the teacher must always begin his teaching by declaring his values, without ever imposing them, but never hiding or omitting them. In the beginning of every year, I say to my students, those are my beliefs, those are my values. I'm here to transmit them, but I'm here to respect your values, your choices, your way of living and thinking. I end where I began, with the honor of being with you in this center of values and knowledges, with young people. That's why I chose to be professor. I love every year to see younger people coming to my classes with different ideas, or with the same ideas, but with different ways of showing, formulating, of explaining, of arguing with the same ideas. And it's so important to learn, because a professor teaches but learns. I learned so much in these over 40 years of professor. In December, I'll be having 70. And at the age of 70, I won't be able to lecture but PhD and master classes. I won't go back to classes with 500 students, 400 students. I will miss it a lot. It is important to be president of Portugal. It is much more important to be professor of university. Much more important. Of course, a president is elected by millions of people. and a professor's result of a career, of study, and of exams and judgments of a couple of colleagues, older colleagues. But nothing replaces the pleasure of learning and teaching. Nothing. Nothing. It's a unique spiritual pleasure. Well, here we are in this Egypt, the cradle of civilization, which peopled my imagination as a teenager, marveling at the richness of your culture and the profundity of your civilization. It's so good to be here, because it's a kind of returning to the roots of so much of our history. The history of Africa, the history of Europe, the history of America, the history of Asia, because it all started here. In a way, it started here. Always believing, as I believe, that it may be better in the future than it was in the past or in the present. And that's why we professors, you students, we really love learning and teaching, because we want a better future. We want a better future. And for all of us, nobody in this world is really happy without the happiness of the others. Our happiness is built through the happiness of the others. There is no lonesome person. We live in community. So even those that believe as I do, we know the way as a believer is a way that crosses the destiny of the others. Their suffering, their joys, their dreams, their expectations, and their dramas. And we must every day think of them. We must think of them as we are presidents or prime ministers or politicians, but much more than that when we are professors or students, but much more than that when we are human beings. But that's what we have in common. We are human beings. And we want that our happiness is shared with all the others. Thank you very much.